Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships, and making sense of this whole mess. So let's talk about something we don't talk about enough here, and that's really tricky for people who are surviving narcissistic relationships, which is meaning and purpose. Over the years, because I do work from an existential frame with my clients and a humanistic frame, we talk about meaning and purpose, right? And so the short answer to this is I'm not sure how possible it is when you're in one, right? If you're trying to survive and navigate chronic manipulation and having to walk on eggshells and choose every word just right, meaning and purpose can feel like a stretch. But there's lots of talk about meaning and purpose in sort of the mental health internet world, right? And we've talked about it for a long time, but it's getting a lot of buzz now, right? The existential focus on deriving meaning from suffering, on engaging in human activity in a manner that is not just robotic, but is driven by the sense of purpose. And that to do this, to get out of the mindset of just being a human cog in the wheel, but to exert your humanity and to have everything from the most mundane to the most transcendent behaviors be driven by meaning and purpose. It's considered, and I consider it certainly, healthy and good and important. I agree with it all, right? I practice, like I said, from a humanistic and existential frame. And I believe that when a client becomes aligned with what gives them meaning and purpose and is congruent with their true selves, and hell, even finding your true self, that's no small task, but all of that's healthy, right? And lots of people out there touting it and talking about it and posting about it, though I'm not always entirely sure that everyone understands it. So all of that said, when a person is navigating the daily kind of a narcissistic relationship, they sort of have to miss the boat on meaning and purpose. Narcissistic relationships in the day-to-day, they're about survival. So many of your psychological resources, or the psychological resources of any person in that kind of relationship, have to go to psychological safety. And if you've had a lifetime of these relationships, every time the narcissistic person lashes out at you or goes quiet when you don't do exactly what they want, it's really uncomfortable. So thinking about meaning and purpose is not on the top of your list when you're trying to survive. Most of your psychological resources are going into making sense of a mess in which half the time you are blaming or doubting yourself, and the other half of the time you feel like you've entirely lost your mind. Does that mean that people who are in narcissistic relationships don't have any chance of pursuing meaning and purpose? No, absolutely not. And there are ways to do it. But for folks out there who are often hearing the various gurus out there saying, find meaning, find purpose, and you're struggling with that, it's easier said than done if you are managing and navigating a toxic relationship. So you might say, okay, Dr. Ramani, then tell me, how am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to find this meaning and purpose? First, you have to get your narcissism house in order. And by that, I mean it's all about the radical acceptance. The more you invest any psychic energy into the idea that the relationship could change, the more exhausted you are going to become. It's about recognizing that whatever narcissistic relationships that you have to maintain, you have to keep, that you cannot get out of in your life, you must accept that they are not going to change. That there will not be that moment of insight. There will not be that moment they get it, or that they apologize or genuinely apologize. What you see is what you get. And that you don't let the good days confuse you, but rather that you know that those are the days you kind of, I don't know, you might be able to get some psychological things done, but you can't fully settle into the sanity of those so-called good days. But when you do that, radically accept, disappointing as it is, you can pull some of the energy out. It's like living in a place with really unpredictable weather. Just because there's a sunny day, you don't throw away your umbrellas. Then you have to recognize that despite the radical acceptance, this relationship is always going to be stressful. You have to sort of radically accept that it's going to suck It's never going to be easy. It will always be frustrating and angering. Radical acceptance has lots of pieces. It's not just the radical acceptance that they're not going to change, but it's also the radical acceptance that it's always going to be a little bit awful. Then the hard work is figuring out what matters to you, or the stuff you think matters to you because the narcissistic person told you it matters to you, not concerned with that. You have to really dig into what is the stuff that matters to you, that does give you a sense of connecting to something larger than you, that does infuse you with purpose. This takes time. And the key is that you don't put it on you're these things that give you meaning and purpose out there on the chopping block for the narcissistic person to ridicule or criticize. Figuring out this on your own time, and not putting it out there in front of the narcissistic person to mock can make a difference. Holding sacred your sort of meaning and purpose. Once you start figuring that out, the key is to start doing it. Again, not easy when you're in a narcissistic relationship, because you either have to pursue meaningful and purposeful activities on the sly or not talk about it. These relationships leave us questioning ourselves. So to have someone telling you that something is a waste of time or dumb or silly, or they roll their eyes on your sense of meaning, on your sense of purpose, it doesn't feel good, and it may leave you doubting it all. It's important you do this in your own way, on your own terms. This could be anything from volunteering, to writing, to going back to a hobby you put aside, to parenting the way you want to connecting with people who matter to you. The only way to survive having ongoing contact with a narcissistic person or relationship is to sane up the rest of your life. And the one way to do that is to pursue meaningful, purposeful, and frankly, joyful activity. Lots of people tell you that you need to go out there and find meaning and purpose like it's a destination, but not many of them tell you how to do this if you are in a narcissistic relationship. You can, yes, but it's a hell of a lot harder. Make sure you are clear on what this narcissistic relationship is about. Lean into that radical acceptance, and you too can infuse your life with meaning and purpose. You just don't tell them. And I have to say, over the years, when I've worked with clients on this, and I'm thinking about somebody who had really said this to me and had said, meaning and purpose, like it is a miracle that I get through the entire day and don't feel like I've lost my damn mind. And I remember when we were talking about this in sessions, would feel like, what are you talking about? Like, don't even talk to me about meaning and purpose. I need a guide to survive. There's also, and what we ended up doing was, it took years, but then the person slowly might get out of the relationship and say, oh, I get this meaning and purpose thing. But when you're surviving, think about it. If you didn't have enough to eat, if you didn't have a place to sleep, if you didn't have those things, the meaning and purpose feel like higher order luxuries, and they often are in any hierarchy of needs. And in a narcissistic relationship, you may have a place to sleep, you may have food to eat, but you're psychologically, chronically hypervigilant. You're always trying to survive, always trying to avoid setting them off. It's survival mode, folks, and it's hard to do that then. And also keep it real. I remember somebody once saying to me, meaning and purpose, what do you want me to write, the great American novel? I'm like, no. What do you love? And this is somebody who loved to cook. And you know what that person did? They made some things that I think they're bake or something like that. They love to bake, and they baked some cakes, and they donated them to a local domestic violence center. This was somebody who had been married to a malignant narcissist. For her, that was bringing around a circle the things she was criticized for doing, cooking and making noise in the kitchen, bringing it around and doing it again, and then taking it to a place with people who were experiencing something that very much paralleled what she did. There's always a way. But don't lose that focus. But recognize that finding meaning and purpose has to be informed, because it's harder when you're in a narcissistic relationship. Thanks again.